Anthony has a question about God and time. And
I
we've
love these
already
kind of questions.
talked, yeah, and we've talked about God and time before, but this is an interesting angle that he takes on it. And he says this: it seems to me, at least, that if something exists in time, it must also necessarily exist in space as well. For example, if a person is alive at January 2nd, 1941, he must also have some type of spatial location on January 2nd, 1941. And so time and space seem to be inseparable descriptions of the same reality. So if God is in time, therefore must God also be in space? Clark Pinnock seems to think this, but this seems so weird to me. It sounds very Mormon. Can you help?
Yeah, Clark did kind of he butted up with some Mormons, towards the end of his life. He maybe was influenced a little bit on thinking on that. Although I'm not sure that Clark was saying that God intrinsically has a body. He may have been saying that God manifests himself as in a bodily form. But I don't care. I don't want to get into that. But here's the thing. First, it's always good, since all the wisdom of God is found in Christ. Colossians 2. All the treasures of God's wisdom are found in Christ. We should always start with Christ, and more particularly start with the crucified Christ. And here's the thing. Now look, if Jesus is a definitive revelation of God, and I think he should be, what I know about Jesus is that he is the Word made flesh. God became incarnate. Yet he's Yahweh embodied. And to say that God became incarnate means that at one time he wasn't incarnate, and then he became incarnate. He wasn't eternally incarnate. He wasn't timelessly incarnate. He became incarnate. So there needs to be a before and an after. And that itself is enough to tell me that God has a before and after. There's been the tendency to confuse time and space, or to fuse time and space, is in some respects almost built into the Western psyche. The way we talk, we spatialize time all over the place. Like I'll say, hey, my birthday's coming up, and you get the picture of that, like there's something out there called my birthday, and it's approaching me, or we're getting close to Christmas, as though we're in a car somewhere and Christmas is a destination. So we spatialize time, and we treat left and right as though it was simply another version of before and after. Lakoff and Johnson, in a book called Philosophy in the Flesh, which is a book that is mind-blowing, and I'd encourage everyone to read it. It's kind of it's almost a Kantian revolution, but on a cognitive sort of basis, a cognitive linguistic basis. But they try to show how all of our basic metaphors are rooted in our bodily experience, and it kind of has to do with our brain circuitry. And they suggest that the reason why we tend to spatialize time is because in formative years, time mainly is measured by how long it takes us to crawl from this space to that space, or to go from here to there. And so time becomes the measurement of space, so to speak. But in fact, they're very different realities. It's just a way of left and right have got nothing to do with before and after. You see, they're different dimensions. And so Anthony was assuming that to exist to exist in time means that you must exist in space, and it just doesn't follow. They're fundamentally different realities. So even if God has no right or left, and that is to say, even if God is spaceless, and it's hard to kind of know exactly to get a coherent concept of that. But even granting that if God has no left or right, I still got every reason to believe that he does have a before and after. The incarnation shows it, and every verb applied to God throughout the Bible shows it. I'm not going to add anything to that.
Well, I do. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's pertinent or not, but it's. I just think that in some ways they're two different questions that we ask of the same thing, because like you have the space issue, which is like what is its form, what is its shape, things like that, questions like that. And then the time question, you're still looking at the same thing. You're just measuring how it changes, how it was this and now it's that. And so it seems like even though they're two radically different categorical questions, they are very intimately related. You can't have time meaningfully without something existing. And
well, yeah, sure. but to say something existing, does that have to mean something existing in space? I think God's always had a before and after,
Mhm.
and God's a spiritual being. But since God's a personal being, and in fact God's a triune personal being, and that involves relationships, and relationships are reciprocal. They're give and take. They require a before and after. I think it's built into the nature of love that
Yeah.
there always has been a before and there always will be an after, and that's who God is. And what we call time is simply our way of measuring that.
Yeah. I was surprised when you started off with Christ on the cross, which I thought was obviously that's the right way to place to start. I thought you were going to say that given that Jesus was incarnate, that was God incarnate into a very specific bodily form, I thought you were going to say, therefore, it doesn't seem like it's heresy. It doesn't seem like it's inappropriate to say that God could have some type of form, and that in that way. That's the direction I thought you were going to go. I thought you were going to say,
Yeah. But to say that God could have a form in that way, since God obviously does have a form in that way, is different than that's what I was saying about Clark Pinnock. God can take on a form like that, but I think what Anthony was suggesting is that if God's in time, then God must be finitely located in space,
yeah,
and that essentially, I guess God essentially would have to be finite, which I would have
yeah,
refused to think that's the case.
yep.